Hey guys, welcome to the Liberal Hive Mind, a channel solely focused on exposing the abundant hypocrisy of the left. You know, every time you think you've seen the worst of it, another story comes along that makes your stomach turn. I'm sure you guys have seen the news, but if you haven't, let me quickly fill you in on the context. A young Ukrainian woman who fled the war to find safety here in America ends up brutally murdered on a Charlotte light rail. I mean, it's absolutely insane when you flee a war zone, fleeing indiscriminate violence, not wanting to end up a statistic or a casualty. And so you flee to America and you end up suffering a similar fate that you were running away from in the first place. She came to America for a better life and instead found the exact opposite, because once again, a violent repeat offender was allowed to roam free. A bloodthirsty psychopath taking her life for literally no reason at all. And you know, it's not just tragic, but it's incredibly infuriating, because it's the same story that we've been watching on repeat. Career criminals cycling through a broken justice system, let back on the streets, until eventually it culminates in the most horrendous violence and crime that you could imagine. You know, here we go again, more senseless violence perpetrated by yet again another individual who should not have been let back onto the streets. Let me show you guys exactly what's going on here. We got some stuff to get into, so let's roll the tape. All right, folks, so here's what happened. We've got Irina Zarutska, a 23-year-old who, from what I understand, was an aspiring model. She was working at a pizza shop in Charlotte trying to build a new life after escaping war-torn Ukraine. And on August 22nd, she got on the Lynx Blue light rail. And tragically and unfortunately, that's where she met her fate. We have CCTV footage that shows her sitting quietly, headphones on, minding her own business. And there's a man sitting next to her who's been now identified as DeCarlos Brown Jr., 34-year-old, who seems to sit there and contemplate, and then for no apparent reason, he pulls out a knife and stabs her brutally in the neck. I can show you guys the video, but of course, a good chunk of it is going to have to be blurred. Every single time I try to show you guys this stuff, the video usually gets dinged by YouTube, but, you know, we'll try to do our best here. I mean, total indiscriminate psychopathic violence. She unfortunately bled out right there on the train. It's also a very odd scene. It seems like passengers either didn't notice or didn't know how to react. People are just sitting there, sat frozen, staring as this guy casually walks across the train. It seems as though he might have even cut himself in the process, as you can see droplets falling to the ground. It's obviously a very hard video to watch. It's a hard circumstance or situation to stomach in the first place. But now what makes it even worse is what I mentioned in the intro. This guy, this DeCarlos Brown Jr. fella, isn't some unknown character. No, in fact, he's very much known to law enforcement. Let's just go ahead and pull up his mugshots. How many do we have here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Now, one of the photos you can tell clearly isn't him. Now, some people have suggested he's been arrested 14 times, but I can only clearly identify 13 from these mugshots. But basically, he's a career violent criminal, a total antisocial nutcase. This was not his first violent crime. This guy's got a rap sheet that goes back years. Armed robbery, breaking and entering, threats, larceny, even a bizarre 9/11 call claiming that he was being controlled by, quote, man-made material. Not exactly sure what that means, but that's just the reporting. But anyways, obviously, this guy was a ticking time bomb. He wasn't well in the head. And I guess it really puts into perspective how deeply needed insane asylums are. It's time to bring back the asylums, just as President Trump is attempting to do right now. But without getting caught moving towards a tangent, this guy spent significant time in prison, and the system just kept spitting him back on the streets over and over again. And I think really what needs to be said, I mean, it's not just for the sake of being partisan. I think it's true. This is a Democrat problem. Now, some people might be saying, well, North Carolina voted for Donald Trump, therefore it's a Republican state, but that isn't the case at all. The last governor and the new governor, both Democrats, and of course, Charlotte is a deep blue city with a Democrat mayor, Democrat council, yada, yada, yada. We've been through this a million times before. And so what dominates in Charlotte politics is the same same soft on crime worldview that says we need more social programs, more consultants, more social workers, more school lunch programs. That's how we're going to tackle crime, but never any actual accountability. The problem is soft on crime Democrat policies that continue to release these repeat offenders, these clearly mentally unstable, crazed individuals, back on the streets to reoffend over and over again. And the reality is Charlotte is in complete chaos, especially on public transit.
Keeping people safe on area buses and light rail trains. That's the focus of a special meeting called by Charlotte Mayor Vi Lyles.
Lyles chairs the Metropolitan Transit Commission and requested that the commission meet on the heels of a homicide on the Blue Line just over a week ago.
Part of this meeting, which was sparked, is, like you said, the August 22nd killing of 23-year-old Irina Zatruska on the Blue Line. She was allegedly stabbed by DeCarlos Brown. Now, Brown is currently charged with first-degree murder. But there have been plenty of other incidents on buses and the trains. Back in November of 2023, a rider was stabbed after getting into an argument with another passenger. Then in August of 2023, an off-duty security guard was involved in a fight that started on a bus and carried over into the streets of Uptown. And then in the summer of 2023, there were 2 stabbings and a shooting in a 1-month span.
The moment that the transit system starts to become something where it's not considered to be safe is the moment in which you begin to lose riders, you begin to lose the momentum that you want to keep.
Now, CATS officials say that they are actively trying to increase their security force. According to CATS, there are currently 184 security officers, and the goal is to get that number up to 219 officers.
That's the current state of public transit in Charlotte. And you know what? It's really a freaking drag, because public transit is supposed to be one of those core public services. You know, you go to countries in Asia like Japan and Singapore, and the experience is fantastic. You get on the train, you feel safe, the environment is clean, the people are clean. When it's done right, it's a great service for the people, especially for the people who can't afford cars, people who got to get to work. It's something that many people rely on. But in places like Charlotte and across big cities in the United States, public transit has become hazardous. From people smoking crack in the back train to vicious freaking murderers engaging in indiscriminate violence, it's completely out of control. And frankly, the solution is simple, but if you listen to Democrats, they're still trying to figure it out. The mayor of Charlotte is now launching an investigation and effort into making public transit more safe. And what do you think that means? More consultants, more studies, probably appointing a new chief of safety, putting up more cameras. It's all a distraction. It's more academic and bureaucratic nonsense attempting to look for solutions. But the solution is not complicated here. It doesn't require million-dollar studies or academic panels. The solution is to lock these violent people up after their first few offenses. Stop releasing these career criminals back on the streets. Stop pretending that every single criminal is redeemable, just a lost soul that needs to be brought back on the path. Because this naive, latte liberal worldview is getting innocent people killed. Not everybody is just an unfortunate case of their social circumstance, and even if they are, sometimes the people are just far too gone that we just simply cannot help them. The solution is now stiffer penalties, crackdown on crime, less social workers and more police maybe sending the frickin' National Guard, just like they're doing at Union Station and other places in Washington, D.C., to finally put an end to the chaos. Enough is enough. And you know, that's not to say that we shouldn't tackle the core social components. I'm not saying that there's nothing to be done in terms of fixing the broken public academic system or the social failures in many intercity communities and big Democrat cities, and of course fixing the most important issue, fatherless homes. You know, those are all important things to focus on, sure, but you're not going to find those solutions overnight. And even if you start tackling those more core solutions, it's not going to fix the people who are already, again, too far gone. When a violent psychopath shows you who he is through his extensive criminal rap sheet, his violent history, you should believe him. And you know, at some point, it's probably time to admit that it's time to go back to embracing policy decisions like the 3-strike rule. If you are consistently committing violent felonies, at some point you either belong in a prison for the rest of your life or in an insane asylum. If you prove to the world that you cannot function in civilized society, you should be removed from civil society. It's time for a wake-up call. This Democrat naivete must be made a thing of the past. I get it, we went through like a 20-year liberal era where the privileged woke university kids smoking weed and doing LSD had all these genius epiphanies about how we should run society, and we've very much followed that model, but these naive worldviews and these theoretical platitudes clearly aren't getting us the desired result. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's idea that if you stop enforcing crime, that the world becomes a green grass, white picket fence suburb obviously doesn't work in the real world in practice, and it's time to start admitting that. It's time to start going back to common sense and fighting for the law-abiding citizen, and frankly, just giving up on these criminals. Because again, the downside, the consequence, is blood on the streets, and that has to be acknowledged. Anyways, that's pretty much what I got for you guys. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.